This is a company most of you guys have definitely heard about. This company created some of the most known video games of all time. Video games that we all know and love. What does Call of Duty, Overwatch, and World of Warcraft have in common? They are owned by Activision Blizzard. This company made a huge impact in the gaming industry and is arguably one of the main reasons why gaming is where it's at today. If you ask your friend what is the best video game series of all time, odds are they're gonna say Call of Duty. That video game series gave birth to a new wave of gamers, causing the gaming industry to reach new levels it had not seen before that series was created. And this allowed Activision Blizzard to amass over $23 billion in assets. And the man behind the rise of Activision Blizzard, Bobby Kotick, is now worth over $800 million, a fortune made after decades of hard work and innovation. His life tells the story of a young ambitious man with dreams to build a business from the ground up, overcoming any obstacle that came into his way. And he is where he is at today because of his capitalistic and soulless mindset. See, Bobby Kotick made business moves which allowed him to gain absurd amounts of money at the expense of his employees. There was absolutely nothing Bobby Kotick was not prepared to do in order for him to become successful, and that mindset was a double-edged sword which played a huge role in his downfall, making him known as the most evil CEO in the gaming industry. And obviously holding such a title comes with an insane amount of hate, right? But that would be an understatement if we really looked into Bobby Kotick's life. He stated that the hate grew so much that it started affecting his dating life. Images of him being depicted as the devil would show up once you search up his name, causing any normal human being to disassociate from him after seeing that obvious red flag. And this leads to the question that should be on everyone's mind. What the hell did he do wrong? How could Bobby Kotick go from being an entrepreneur that has worked with prominent figures such as Steve Jobs and is the man behind one of the most important gaming companies of all time to becoming the most hated person in the gaming industry? To understand how this happened, we need to jump all the way back into Bobby Kotick's early days in order to understand him as a person. Bobby Kotick was born in Long Island, New York in 1950. He came from a loving, happy middle-class family, and it was not long for him to discover his entrepreneurial instincts. According to his mother, at the age of 3, young Bobby sold his mother's ashtray to a friend who had come over for a playdate, making him a whopping $3. And after that, business ideas never stopped pouring out of him. It was clear that Bobby had a passion for making money, and making money was something he was really good at. So by junior high, he moved on to slightly bigger business ventures. He would sell sandwiches, restring tennis rackets, sold wallets. He even rented out Manhattan night spots on off nights, and would throw parties for underage kids. And it was clear that he would do practically anything to earn money. But to Bobby Kotick, something was missing. Deep down, he wanted to do something big, something that would give him notoriety and would make him a lot of money. So during his time at the University of Michigan, 19-year-old Bobby Kotick founded a new company called Arctronics. See, at the time, Apple II software packages cost about $10,000. So Bobby Kotick and his roommate Howard Marks wanted to create a cheaper and easier to use alternative to emulate Apple's Lisa operating system. So they created a software called Jane. Howard Marks was the programmer that created the software, and he had the goal to make the computer easier to use for the everyday person like his parents.
And I used it, till 5 in the morning every night, and my father would come and look at me and say, "What are you doing at 5 in the morning? When I was your age, I was up at 5 in the morning, but not using computers." I said, "Sorry, things change." And so I was really completely obsessed about the idea of computers. There's one thing that I didn't like is that my mother, my father, most of the people I knew, all my friends, had no idea what to do with it.
And on the other hand, Bobby Kotick managed the marketing side of Arctronics, and he had the goal to make as much money as he can.
We were at a company about 5 months ago that was interested in buying our product, and we talked to them for a while, and they said, "This is going to be great fun. We've been in the business for 2 years. We have a lot of fun doing it, and we're in it for the fun. And we're in it for the fun too, but we're in it really for the money."
And later on, Apple noticed the work that Bobby and Howard were putting into Arctronics, so Apple contracted them to create software for the Apple II. And during all of this, Bobby Kotick and his roommate Howard Marks were still in college. So when Steve Jobs came to visit Arctronics and found out they were still students, he told them to drop out of college.
So in 1983, my college roommate and I started a software company to make Apple II software. And he had worked at Apple Computer in France for a guy called Jean-Louis Gasset, who was president of Apple France and was really a visionary in France. And we started this company to make a mouse and a Windows-like, iconic operating system for the Apple II. And Steve heard about it, we gave him a demonstration of it, and he liked the idea of it and wanted us to make this software and the mouse for a new computer called the Apple II GS. So we started making it, and then Steve came to visit to see our software, and he got really upset with me because he found out I was still a college student, and he told me that I had to quit college. And I said I couldn't because I had committed to my parents that I would stay in college. And he said, I will rip your effing contract up with Apple Computer if you don't quit college tomorrow. He forced me to leave college, which in hindsight didn't work out so badly.
Apple contracting Arctronics gave Bobby an idea. If one company was interested in their software, maybe other companies would be interested as well. In his head, it was a win-win. Worst case scenario, they still work for Apple, but if everything goes well, they could earn more money. And as we know, Bobby Kotick loves money. So he set out to look for more companies that were interested in what Arctronics had to offer. And a company he had in mind was Electronic Arts. But this time, he did not want to get contracted. He wanted EA to buy his company. Bobby was tired of working on small things. He wanted to do something big, and unfortunately for him, he couldn't scale Arctronics to what he wanted it to become. So he wanted EA to purchase his company so that he could focus on other things. But Trip Hawkins, the CEO of EA at the time, refused to purchase his company. And this was devastating to Bobby, so devastating that it was the final straw that pushed Bobby Kotick to the realization that it was much better for him to be involved in publishing large projects himself than to offer his services to other companies. And in 1987, he attempted to take that route. He tried to acquire a home electronics company called Commodore International, and he had the plan to remove the keyboard from a device called the Amiga 500 so that he could turn it into a video game system, but he couldn't convince the chairman of Commodore to sell control of the company. Taking the loss a couple years later, in December of 1990, he went ahead and purchased a controlling stake in Leisure Concepts, which at the time was Nintendo's licensing agent. And lastly, Bobby Kotick and his new partner Brian Kelly purchased 25% stake in an almost bankrupt company called Mediagenic. And the first move they made, they changed the company name to what it is known as today, Activision. And Bobby had clear plans on what he wanted Activision to become. So when he got the chance, he performed a full restructuring of the company and refocused the company on video games. Then 1 year later, Bobby Kotick became the CEO of Activision. But no matter how much work Bobby put into making Activision successful, it was still an almost bankrupt company. And at the time, the gaming industry was in a really bad position. Add that with the countless bad marketing decisions that Activision made, like merging with Infocom, the company was at the brink of collapsing. And in order for Activision to start making money again, Bobby Kotick came up with an idea that would soon become his signature strategy to making money. He decided to gamble on the release of sequels to already popular video games. And this was one of the best decisions that Bobby Kotick made for Activision. They put $1.5 million into developing Return to Zork and released the game on September 15th of 1993. And in the first 6 months of releasing the game, Activision sold 300,000 units. And by September of 1994, the game had earned $2.4 million in revenue. Bobby Kotick finally found a business strategy that was working, releasing sequels to already popular games. And this strategy showed promise, so Activision went ahead and did that for multiple games, like MechWarrior 2. And once again, they hit the jackpot. They sold 500,000 copies within the first 3 months. Bobby finally revived Activision and the future seemed to be bright, but like always, Bobby never settled. So he started to expand Activision by purchasing promising studios, and fast forward to the early 2000s, Activision had become one of the leading Western game publishers, right below EA, the same company that Bobby Kotick wanted to sell his company to. And this is where it gets interesting. On October 29th of 2003, Activision released the first ever Call of Duty game, and quickly, gamers gamers across the world loved Call of Duty. And this is when Bobby Kotick made the switch from a well-respected figure in the gaming industry to a soulless businessman that only cared about money. See, Activision made it to this point because Bobby Kotick chose to make a bet on releasing sequels to already popular video games. And that strategy has been working for a long time. But a mistake that Bobby Kotick made was that he kept using the strategy for too long, neglecting the consequences that came with it. And later on, people have started to notice. Activision released multiple Spider-Man and Tony Hawk games that felt the same. Bobby Kotick and Activision were exploiting their customers' hopes for profit. They were hoping that whatever new game they put out will be different and it would not disappoint. But each new game that Activision released felt the same and had extreme amounts of bugs. So Activision had to find a solution. Should they fix the bugs, or should they get their hands on other popular video games? And as expected, they chose to merge with Vivendi Games, which included Blizzard Entertainment. So now they were known as Activision Blizzard. And along with the merger, Bobby Kotick and Activision got their hands on some popular video games, such as Diablo, StarCraft, and Warcraft. And with the very fast growth of the Call of Duty series, a series that is known for having video games that feel the same, and the success of multiple other video games owned by Activision Blizzard, by 2021, Bobby Kotick's net worth was $870 million. But don't get Bobby Kotick wrong. Yes, he was a hard-working businessman that made several smart business decisions, but in reality, he was not an ethical person at all. See, Bobby Kotick was more than happy to ignore systemic issues within Activision Blizzard, especially the abuse suffered by Activision Blizzard's female employees. See, Activision Blizzard has over 9,000 employees, and according to a lawsuit, harassment and frat boy culture was common within the company, and that environment drove one of its female employees to suicide during a business trip after male co-workers gained access to her pictures. And to make it worse, the male supervisor had brought toys to the business trip to harass female employees, and countless employees had come forward and claimed that female employees have been getting harassed for years upon years at Activision Blizzard. Not only that, Bobby Kotick allegedly not only knew about what was happening within the company, but he was also shitty to women as well. And not only that, he tried to silence what was happening in the company. In 2006, one of Bobby Kotick's assistants claimed that he tried to harass her, and in a voicemail, Bobby claimed to have her killed. And surprisingly, he solved this issue out of court by simply apologizing to her. And then once again, in 2007, he was sued by the flight attendant in a private jet he co-owned. The flight attendant claimed that the pilot had harassed her, causing her to report this issue to the owner, causing Bobby Kotick to fire her. And also the lawsuit states that Bobby Kotick told her that he would kill her as well. You can read this entire article with the link below. Currently, Microsoft is going through the process of acquiring Activision Blizzard for $70 billion, and it is estimated that the deal won't close until 2023. So that means Bobby Kotick will still be the CEO of Activision Blizzard until that happens, hopefully putting an end to his time in the gaming industry.